Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Housing Authority meeting to be open at 3:06 p.m. And I guess we go straight to roll call now. We don't have any of the COVID preambles. So roll call, please.
Authority member Ajinian.
Present.
Agajanian.
Present.
Devine. Isakian.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Parazian.
Here.
And Chair Brotman.
Here. And your report, please.
The agenda for the June 7th, 2022 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on June 1st, 2022 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's the first agenda item?
4 would be approval of minutes. 4A, minutes of the regular Housing Authority meeting of April 19th, 2022 and May 3rd, 2022, and joint City Council and Housing Authority meeting of May 10th, 2022 and May 24th, 2022.
Okay, and does anybody have any comments, or would you like to move the agenda? Move the minutes?
Moved and second.
And second. Okay, that was fast. All right, roll call, please.
Authority member Ajinian.
Yes.
Agajanian.
Yes.
Devine.
Yes.
Kasakian.
Yes.
Najarian.
Yes.
Parazian.
Yes.
And Chair Brotman.
Yes. Okay, and next is public
Next is-
comments.
Next is oral communications, and
Oral
we have
communication.
no calls at this time.
We have no calls. Okay, and any comments from any of my colleagues? No, staff?
Nope.
Nothing? Okay, then I think at this point I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, and the meeting is adjourned at 3:07 p.m. Thank you. That was easy.
All right, we'll wait until, great, we are switched over. So let's call the meeting to order for the June 7th. It's a special city council meeting. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Agajanian,
Present.
Brotman,
Here.
Devine,
Here.
Najarian,
Here.
and Mayor Kasakian.
Here. May we have your report, please?
The agenda for the Tuesday, June 7th, 2022 special public meeting of the City Council was posted on June 1st, 2022 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
All right, we have 2 items before us. Let's have the first item, please.
Community development regarding 3-year economic development strategic plan. A, resolution to adopt and file the City of Glendale's 3-year economic development strategic plan.
Mr. Galanian.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Kasakian, members of City Council. Since 2020, staff has collaborated with the former COVID Business Recovery Task Force and other business partners to develop a 3-year economic development strategic plan as a roadmap to address business challenges and enhance economic opportunities as we transition out of the pandemic. And I'm going to invite Sue Vang, our Deputy Director of Community Development, to share that plan with you and seek your feedback. Sue, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Galanian. Make sure. Good afternoon, Mayor Kasakian and City Council members. Shua Vang, Deputy Director of Economic Development. The item before you today is staff recommendation to adopt and file the 3-year Economic Development Strategic Plan. I'd like to kick off the presentation by showing you a brief introductory and overview video. Please take a look.
Since its founding in 1906, the city of Glendale has transformed from a quaint suburban community to a thriving urban hub with a bustling downtown district. As the 4th largest city in Los Angeles County, located just north of downtown Los Angeles, Glendale has much to offer. It is recognized is one of the safest cities in the United States, and Glendale provides about 200,000 residents and 12,000 businesses with a high quality of life and exceptional services. Glendale is one of Southern California's most desirable retail markets. Factors that make Glendale one of Southern California's emerging regional tech hubs include 6 million square feet of office space, several high-profile tech companies and corporate headquarters, 2 exciting tech accelerators, and our close proximity to JPL, Caltech, and USC that can provide us with talent. Glendale's Economic Development Division worked with key businesses and community stakeholders to develop a 3-year strategic plan. Together, our team identified 3 guiding principles for Glendale's strategic plan: leadership, collaboration, and innovation. We took these 3 principles and crafted 4 priorities that will allow us to adapt and thrive in today's ever-changing economic landscape. Brand identity. The Economic Development Division will raise Glendale's profile and attract new businesses by focusing on our location, quality amenities, and opportunities that Glendale provides to regional, state, national, and global audiences. Business culture. Diversity, equity, and inclusivity remain a priority as we develop a business-friendly environment. Economic development will leverage resources to encourage more minority and women-owned business ventures and continue to support our existing business community. Innovation ecosystem. Economic development will continue to cultivate the city's innovation and tech industry sectors by building strategic partnerships and developing programs that will serve and strengthen our entrepreneur community. Entertainment and lifestyle. Arts, culture, and entertainment are crucial for a thriving city. Economic development will continue to build and promote Glendale's art and entertainment district to help sustain small businesses, attract talent and visitors, and strengthen our economy. Economic Development Strategic Plan will be Glendale's roadmap to ensuring the health of our local economy for years to come. We will continue to strive for sustainable excellence and diversity in Southern California. Since
Okay. So as mentioned in the video, leadership, collaboration, and innovation were the key guiding principles that paved the way towards developing the strategic goals and objectives in the strategic plan. I'd like to take a moment to thank City Council for your leadership and Economic Development staff for all the hard work and dedication working with the community and business partners to reach this milestone. Thank you to the city's talented GTV6 team for producing the video you just saw, and of course, thanks to Salim Manukian from the City Manager's Office for the beautiful voiceover. And last but not least, the Economic Development Strategic Plan would not have been complete without input from some of the valuable business partners here in our community. The business and community stakeholders that participated in the development of the strategic plan consists of community champions and advocates from a wide array of industries and expertise. Altogether, 21 community leaders and partners contributed towards developing the plan. As you may recall, the task force was originally formed in May of 2020 to assist with business support and recovery efforts during the pandemic. We have continued to collaborate and nurture these partnerships through a series of meetings, focusing on identifying key findings, areas of opportunity, and recommendations to guide the framework of the strategic plan. These key findings and recommendations were presented to Council in February of this year, where we also asked for your input on additional considerations to include as part of the plan. Following the Council presentation in February, we have reconvened this task force and really focused on fine-tuning areas of opportunity that led to the delivery of the strategic plan before you today. Before I dive into the details of the economic development plan, I'd like to take a moment to highlight the major key findings within our control that was previously shared with you all. First, Glendale needs a strong brand identity and a robust marketing strategy that will elevate our profile, set us apart, and give us brand recognition. Followed by the need for more entertainment options that will appeal to talent and enable us to attract more young professionals, as well as increase tourism. Creative placemaking is a critical element in achieving this objective, so reimagining public spaces and creating more vibrant urban centers throughout the city to help facilitate social connections and bring people of different backgrounds together will be instrumental in our pursuit of talent attraction and positioning Glendale as one of the best places to visit in the LA metro area. So why is the Economic Development Strategic Plan important? What is the purpose of it? It will serve as a roadmap to guide staff and provide direction on economic development goals to address business challenges and enhance economic opportunities, as well as achieve council and community objectives. It will also empower staff to continue collaborations, program development, and implement strategies with business and community stakeholders. It will also serve as a call to action for additional research, community engagement, and collaboration as we all work together to propel Glendale's economy forward. And last but not least, it aligns with the city's mission and vision. So please keep in mind the Economic Development Strategic Plan. It's a living document. It's intended to be flexible, adjusted annually as market and business conditions evolve, with annual updates to City Council. And certainly we will reevaluate the plan fully every 3 years. The Economic Development Strategic Plan focuses on 4 major themes that emerged out of our stakeholder discussions and includes brand identity, business culture, innovation ecosystem, and entertainment and lifestyle. And I will go through some of the goals and objectives of each of the themes mentioned. Our first objective and goal is to strengthen brand identity and enhance awareness of Glendale on a local, national, and global scale. So Glendale is often sought after as a testing ground for a number of firsts of its kind, whether it's retail or business concepts, and we are home to many entrepreneurs and innovators given our strong market fundamentals. So it'll be important for us to continue to tell our story and market Glendale's value proposition to showcase our competitive advantages, business successes, and the innovation that is happening throughout the city to elevate our profile and receive brand recognition. A few of the major implementation strategies we intend to deploy includes featuring business successes, new openings, and entrepreneurs on a regular basis. And this includes highlighting the great work and achievements of the Community Development Department. We intend to also strengthen regional marketing collaborations such as the Upstart Valley Initiative, which is a partnership with Burbank to represent joint assets, opportunities, and resources that will position both cities as an innovation hub for technology, engineering, and startup opportunities. This includes also collaborating with the Valley Economic Alliance, who is spearheading a Tech Valley development strategy to position this region as an innovation and tech hub to help with brand recognition. So there's definitely a great deal of synergy and areas of opportunity and alignment to elevate our profile and build a stronger Glendale economy. We also intend to increase travel and tourism visibility on Economic Development's website to showcase our amenities, places to eat and visit, things to do in order to position Glendale as a top choice in the Southern California marketplace to not only live, do business, but also visit. Our second goal and objective is to develop a business-friendly environment that supports business attraction, retention, and expansion efforts to ensure a diverse, inclusive, and resilient economy. We recognize to achieve a business-friendly reputation, we must be committed to working together internally on process improvements, as well as collaborating with community and business partners to provide the necessary support and resources to enhance the customer service experience. Some of the major implementation strategies to achieve this business culture objective is to develop an attraction plan that's focused on economic contributors or priority industry sectors, such as tech and entrepreneurship, especially identifying niche markets, such as biotech, medtech, gaming, IT, and cybersecurity, in order to take our tech efforts to the next level. Destination retail and restaurants, such as more breweries, distilleries, and other new and emerging concepts will also be important for economic development to focus on attracting to the city. And this includes targeting fine dining and having a wide array of options for residents and visitors alike to enjoy. Arts, culture, and entertainment types of operations, such as more comedy clubs and other family-friendly amenities, will also be critical to target as part of our attraction plan. Also, from an international trade standpoint, it will be vital for economic development to develop a strategic foreign direct investment plan to attract additional investments, as well as assist Glendale companies expand its market share and presence. This includes exploring a city-led trade mission to build strong relationships with international partners, support local businesses for growth through exports and imports, increase brand visibility on a global scale, and attract foreign direct investment to the city. Another strategy is to establish strong connections with consulate generals and domestic business partners to facilitate trade and relations between the city and foreign partners. Hosting broker lunch presentations so that we can build strategic and strong relationships with local brokerage firms and property owners to be at the forefront of new business leads, trends, challenges, opportunities that will impact the community. In terms of strategies to support business retention and expansion efforts, it is important to grow our own. We like to call that economic gardening. So we intend to seek inclusiveness and foreign partnerships and programs that create opportunities for all businesses with a focus on small, minority, women-owned, and other underserved or unrepresented groups. We also intend to feature or recognize businesses or projects on a monthly or quarterly basis, such as it can be a certificate to thank businesses for its commitment and investment in the city, or engage with the community to vote on a quarterly best or innovative project in the city. Our third objective and goal is to grow the innovation and tech industry sector to attract and retain talent while also supporting the growth and success of entrepreneurs. In today's marketplace, high-growth companies are choosing to locate and expand in locations where talent is accessible and amenities are abundant. So to remain competitive and to build upon Tech Week and Tech on Tap, we intend to accomplish an innovation ecosystem by creating niche markets for further support and programming, such as the clusters I had mentioned earlier. So biotech, medtech, gaming, IT, and cybersecurity will be priority sectors of focus, just to name a few. Further strengthening our partnership with Hero House, as well as tech companies, to engage with local and nearby education institutions, to tour students at our accelerators, get them excited, share information on opportunities and resources in order to attract and retain and motivate talent will also be very important. Providing support to businesses and education partners seeking funding to develop training, innovation, and entrepreneurship programs will also be very important. We intend to also implement an online tool that connects resources available to small businesses and entrepreneurs, and having a centralized platform that's accessible to all businesses is another priority. Our final objective and goal of the strategic plan is to grow the arts, culture, and entertainment sector to position Glendale as a destination city. To that end, we will continue to collaborate with library, arts, and culture to expand the storefront art program. You may recall we presented the recommendation of a VIP or day pass pilot program to entice visitors to come and experience Glendale and encourage local spend. We intend to launch this pilot program with the Greater Downtown Glendale Association, Montrose Shopping Park Association, and a variety of partners, including the Galleria, to test the model and, quite frankly, the success by offering perks such as a free custom car wash or free valet parking at the Americana. Free transit or Beeline Pass get people from one location to another. We plan to also work with a variety of local restaurants and shops to offer discounts and special treats for consumers. We will also partner with local hotels throughout the city to market the VIP card, as well as produce marketing materials to promote our local destinations here. In addition, the idea of a scavenger hunt program with library, arts, and culture was brought up to encourage locals and tourists to visit our restaurants and other destinations with an incentive to receive, whether it's a free city-branded promo item or other prizes upon completion of the scavenger hunt. We would like to also explore the possibility of a tourism marketing or business improvement district to help fund marketing and programming so that we can amplify awareness of Glendale and promote the city as a top choice to visit in the LA metro area. We have also identified several key metrics to manage, communicate, and measure results and progress of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. I have a whole list of items there that we will rely on, such as number of jobs created or retained, number of new businesses attracted to the city within each of the desired industry clusters I mentioned, number of tech tours and student placements, number of VIP or day passes purchased, sales tax growth, monitoring vacancy rates for office as well as retail, number of media impressions or digital engagement. So when we post ads or content, the number of times it is interacted with or viewed to help us measure impact, number of attractive, retained, or assisted businesses that are, again, small, women, minority-owned, or any other underserved or unrepresented groups to ensure equity, access, and opportunity for all businesses. In order for economic development to be successful and sustainable, we will also continue to strengthen collaboration efforts with planning, especially when it comes to placemaking and the entitlement process. So our Assistant Director of Economic Development and Planning, Mr. Bradley Culver, and I are here today with several alternatives. Staff's recommendation is to adopt and file the Economic Development Plan to allow us to continue collaborations, program development, and to implement strategies with the task force. The other alternatives include decline to adopt, which could result in potential delays in developing programs already discussed with the task force. And the third is to consider any other alternative that's not presented by staff. So with that in mind, this concludes our presentation on the 3-year Economic Development Strategic Plan, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from my colleagues?
I have a few. I can
I
could start with a few questions.
I can imagine everyone's minds today being election day or elsewhere, but on this item, let's start with Councilmember Brotman, and then we'll have some comments or questions from Councilmember Devine.
Okay, well, let me just ask a few questions, and maybe I'll hold off on some, I have some broader comments, but I know I had some kind of more specific. So in the report, it talks about the office vacancies, and I was just interested if you could maybe explain a little bit more why you think we have a higher vacancy rate I guess, compared to Burbank, not so much higher than Pasadena, a little bit, but compared to Burbank. Is this, an issue of transit connectivity? I mean, I don't know if that would, or is it the type of tenants we have compared to some of these other cities? Just curious if you've done any analysis to understand why that's the case.
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilmember Brotman. And based on the outreach efforts that we've made with the community, from what we understand, tenants have not resumed office, right? Returning employees back into the office. So that could be a potential reason. But we do plan on working with the community and partners to try to determine if there's a way to, whether it's to pivot and backfill the space with another type of use. There's other ideas too, but I can't give you a concrete answer. But what I do know is just based on what was shared as far as the workforce not returning into the office, causing some office users to downsize.
Right, but that's the case everywhere. So the question is not what's happening at the macro level, but why we're seeing this distinction between Glendale, Burbank, and Pasadena on this particular item. And if you don't know, that's fine. I mean, if I'd be interested in anything you could do to kind of dig further into this. Do we have a different mix of tenants? Is there an issue with, I don't know, our transportation and transit connections? Maybe it's harder to, less attractive for people to come in physically than it is in a place that has, better connections. I don't know, maybe something else I'm not thinking of. So, what would explain that? There's definitely a difference, right? But everybody's facing the same response to COVID. It's across the board. So anyway, that was one question. And then when I read about the section about hotels, I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize that we had so many fewer rooms than Burbank and Pasadena. I was surprised. Maybe I should have known that, but I didn't. I'm curious. What are we seeing in the market as far as the rebound in the hotel industry in general, and when do we think it might be an appropriate time for us to go and do that hotel survey that we've been talking about? I forget if there was kind of a set time frame for that, but I'm wondering if what you're seeing in the market means that maybe this is something we can consider doing sooner rather than later, or vice versa.
Councilmember Brotman, in terms of the hotel hospitality sector, please keep in mind that Pasadena and Burbank, they actually have T-bids, right, to help in terms
They have
of
what?
T-bids, or Tourism Marketing Business Improvement District. And so it's an additional assessment where they're able to utilize those funds to market the city and to entice hotels to develop in those particular cities, which is why we are proposing the possibility of us working with our hotel partners and exploring if that could be a potential solution that we can capitalize on here so that we can grow the hospitality sector here.
Mm-hmm. And that, what did you call it? It's a business improvement
It's like a
district
tourism,
focused
it's an
on-
additional
yeah.
assessment.
Right, so it would be an assessment on property value, or would it be an assessment on rooms, or would it be,
I've seen it where it's an assessment on where the hotel partners or operators, where they pay that directly to the city. I've also seen it where it's an additional assessment on the actual client that's utilizing the room nights.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen it work both ways.
Okay, and then they use that, you're saying they kind of plow that back into marketing?
So it gets allocated back into, it could be marketing. I've seen some cities where they're able to utilize it for infrastructure challenges.
Mm-hmm. Have we run this idea past any of the hotel groups?
It was briefly discussed, and which is why we included it as a potential implementation strategy to further discuss. We have to look further and would be happy to come back and share that with council.
Okay. Those, as far as questions go, I think that's good for me. right
Councilmember, I'm sorry, Mayor Kasakian, Councilmember Brotman, to respond to your second question about the hotel study.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, as you know, we were waiting to transition out of the pandemic
Yeah.
so that the hotel industry will have recovered some, and then we were planning on do the hotel study. I believe, and I'm confirming it right now, I believe it was fall of this year.
Okay,
That was
yeah,
the
my question
intended
was
plan.
kind of, what trends are we seeing in the market? Does it make us feel like that might be sooner or that may be later? Is this new wave going to kind of push this whole thing back? Just,
Good afternoon, Mayor Kasaki and members of the City Council. Councilmember Brotman, we are actually starting that hotel market study now to help kind of understand what that demand is, if that demand has changed. We anticipate bringing that back late summer, early fall. As you're aware, there was a hotel moratorium implemented. So the first step in that work was to conduct that market study. We're going to come back in a couple different touch points between now and November when that moratorium is set to expire so that we can discuss that market study and then look at the alternatives that we had discussed as well about what hotels should look like going forward, if that's conditional use permits, changing the incentive program, things like that. So we'll be able to answer more of those questions. We anticipate at the end of summer, early fall.
so basically you're saying there's enough of a recovery going on that you think we can get like reasonable data by looking at how the market is functioning today?
I would say from a leisure travel perspective, yes, we'll be able to have some insights on a business travel perspective as well, but we'll understand more through this study itself if we're starting to see trends in recoveries.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Councilmember Devine.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I must say, I think you hit the ground running, didn't you? Sure, yes. Well, this is a very robust plan with a lot of moving parts. One of the most impressive statements in the report was that optimism is an overriding theme for Glendale business leaders as they look into the next year, and I think that's very, very important. Now, to get to my questions and comments, you mentioned a couple times about the website and online tools, et cetera. I just want to encourage you to make sure that these are easily accessible, easily understood, so that if businesses go to this website, they can use them, fairly easily and not get caught up. On the business culture objective 2, I just have a question about the arts, culture, and entertainment, the comedy club, and this is just an off. How's the comedy club on ArtSoc doing? I mean, is that something that's successful and that we should look into bringing more into our city? Do we have any information on that at all?
I do actually, Mayor Kasakian and Councilmember Devine. So the Comedy Club was actually recently recognized as one of the top places to see a stand-up comedy in LA area. And so we're really excited to hear about that achievement. We continue to work closely with the ownership there, Sean. He's been very wonderful, and he's been very gracious for council for us to create the ArcSoc Creative Program. And so there's a lot of momentum there, a lot of activity, and he's really, really excited.
Okay, and he's successful there.
Yes.
He's getting people into the club.
Absolutely.
Great. The scavenger hunt you're talking about for, getting people excited about the city, that's for pedestrians. I suggested this several years ago, but it was in a car, and I thought it would be fun. And I don't know, can't remember if it was with the Commission on the Status of Women or or if I was on council at the time, but I mentioned we should have a scavenger hunt where people get little gifts from each place that they're on. But you're thinking of pedestrians so that they can walk and kind of learn about our city, and that's good. Okay. For the robust marketing, are you planning on hiring a consultant? I know we did that at the Airport Authority, and it has boosted our market recognition a lot, extremely. Is there any plan to do that? Is that part of a budget, or do we have funds for that if we decide?
Yes, that is the intent, is that we would bring on a marketing expert PR to help us tell our story, right? I mean, it takes a collective effort, not just the city, but even our amazing businesses here, right? Word of mouth, we need them to also give us, in terms of, why Glendale is such a wonderful place to do business, right? So we want them to to echo the same sentiment as what we've been saying, how wonderful Glendale is. It speaks volumes when it's coming from the business community. So that is the
Right.
intent, that we will bring on a marketing representative to help us get connected with media and, again, tell our story.
Okay, great. The business owners also mentioned childcare as a concern, a major concern. How can the city help with that kind of a problem? Would that be in subsidies, or are you going to try to recruit childcare companies or organizations?
Councilmember Devine, we would have to look into that further in terms of daycare. In economic development, we're focusing a whole lot more in terms of the business community, but we understand that we are part of that conversation, and we will work with the relevant internal departments and external partners, quite frankly, to take a look at some potential solutions. Certainly look for direction from City Council as well. So if you have any ideas, please let us know. We would be happy to take a look at that and explore further.
Okay. Another question is, when you mention business retention and expansion, and you mention explore potential business one-stop shop, how does that differ from what we've always called our concierge, where businesses, small businesses? Because I know that there's an issue with the time it takes and the permitting, et cetera, et cetera. So how is this one-stop shop going to be different from
Yes,
concierge?
That's a great question, Councilmember Devine. So actually, the one-stop shop operator, what we envision is that we would bring in different partners from whether it's federal, state, workforce, all convene into one shop. That way, it makes it convenient for a business owner, or quite frankly, any business here in Glendale, to go to one centralized location, get their questions answered, get help instantaneously, instead of going from, say, one building to another. The business concierge service that we provide in economic development, at this point, it's more of an internal setup. So our economic development team working closely with the other development departments, so whether it's planning, building and safety, fire, to get plans quickly permitted. But the thought process there is that we would like to offer it up to all businesses, again, bringing all the different partners together under one shop. Many businesses have different challenges that they're facing. They may have questions pertaining to incentives. We have a good relationship with the Governor's Office of Economic Development as well as the federal government, where we can, get them, point them in the right direction, get them their questions answered right away. I hope that answers.
Well, would this one-stop shop be kind of a standalone part of the department? Or would it be like someone comes in and you'd start gathering all these people together and trying to get this process going?
We're still looking into avenues in terms of housing, an actual facility or building, maybe even exploring city-owned assets, vacant buildings, possibly along ARCSOC with the vacant units there. It's not vacant right now. Let me take that back. But if it does become vacant, we love to come back to City Council and provide you with a plan in terms of what we would recommend. So one example that I'm envisioning right now is, again, the one-stop shop, where we bring all the different partners together. It's right in the middle, in the heart of Arts and Entertainment District, just so that there's other amenities around as well to get people, again, excited. That's kind of a thought process. We still have to look into it further and see how we can make it work.
Okay, thank you. That's good for me. Very good.
Colleagues, Councilmember Najarian?
Just briefly, I like the report. I like all the work you've done into it. I'd really like to focus on your fourth goal. Your fourth objective is the entertainment and lifestyle. We used to have, this is just in the last minute, very nice dining establishments. Il Gazebo, Farniente, Jack's, Harvest Inn, Milano's. Those were all white tablecloth restaurants, which would cater, let's say, to the executives who are in town, and they could have their dinners or their lunches And we've lost those restaurants. We really have not had anything backfilling them, except for the ones in Americana. We've got, you know, Bourbon Steak and Amici and maybe another one coming in. But on the whole, we're missing that variety. We've got a lot of restaurants, but they're on that lower tier, that middle tier, if you will. And I think we need to really up our game and bring in some higher end dining establishments that'll help you, you know, generate and cultivate the workforce that you were talking about, one of the earlier objectives. So that's something I'm concerned about, and I'd like to. I know it's not for lack of trying. I know that you know, your predecessors have tried as well, but I'd really like to see some of that. And I mean, we've got great new places, you know, Chess Park, which is more casual dining, but something a little more formal. The white tablecloth, I think, is the term economic development people use. And I would be very excited to see some advancement in recruiting some of those restaurants. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember
I don't
Vitale?
have
All
any
right.
question. Thank you.
All right, well, again, I want to thank you also for the report, and I know that we have some comments here. So before I give my questions and we'll wrap up with my comments, I'd like to actually first go to those who have been patiently waiting to address this topic. We have one person here in the audience with us, and we have one caller. So, Mr. Lemo, if you want to come forward, you are here to speak. Are you here on behalf of the Downtown Glendale Association?
Yes, Mayor, thank you, and
3
thank you,
minutes.
council members. I am here on behalf of the Greater Downtown Glendale Association. We are, at the very least, extremely supportive of this plan for a variety of reasons, but I'm only going to focus on a few so that I can be respectful of your time. The collaboration with the business community has been extraordinary, and it's been through the COVID downturn as well. We've been meeting for 2 years, and everyone's opinion has been handled. Sometimes the Zoom meetings were a little lengthy, but everybody got to weigh in, and I could see from the report that everybody's comments were actually recorded and played back. One of the biggest strengths of this strategic plan is that it took 2 years to gather data for a 3-year plan. And I think that's very important because we gathered data during the time when businesses faced the biggest challenge. And we're all very optimistic that we're not going to face in the near future a challenge quite as severe as what that was. One of the biggest benefits of this plan is once it's adopted and filed, literally if it's adopted and filed this afternoon, tomorrow afternoon, businesses will compare us differently from other cities that are simply just touting, oh, we're a great place, come and see us. We have a plan. We have a way forward. And I think that's a real benefit. One of the things we've realized at DGA and the same at the Galleria and the Americana and even going up to North Brand is the first recovery is taking place with luxury. We may not like it. We may not think that that's most convenient for everybody, but that is what's leading the way. It's leading the way in hospitality. It's leading the way in restaurants. And that luxury business, which you will see springing even more so with Gucci opening at the Americana and others businesses coming, will bring and proliferate white tablecloth restaurants, and it will permeate throughout the boulevard. I don't know if you've all been to the Glenmark. It's not just the hotel, but even the coffee shop on the base floor is packed. I've been there 3 times in probably a week and a half, and they're always busy no matter what time you're going there. So that synergy we have to take advantage of. When people say, well, what about our office? There's a tremendous difference in the office here and the office in Pasadena. One of the changes is it's easier to do business here. People used to joke. I used to hear them joking at the counter. If Noah would have come to Glendale to build the Ark, it would have never been built in his lifetime, and probably not in his kid's lifetime either. There's a different attitude in Glendale now, which has become truly more business friendly. Not just to welcome a business into City Hall, but to say, okay, let's find a way to get you to a yes instead of telling you no. And that's a big difference for business, and that will permeate. A lot more comments, but
If you have a few more, you can wrap up.
just very, very quickly. What's important for us to keep in mind is having a plan, especially what I understand is a living plan, so we're all, especially you, but all of us are going to be able to tinker and change it as we go on, is job number one. Job number two, we need to take advantage of the input of all businesses. The small business input on this plan was extraordinary. And lastly, I do believe, as has been the result of the Greater Downtown Glendale Association, I do believe that even 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we first spoke with hotels, they did want a tourism district, and the newer hotels absolutely are willing to assess themselves to spend money. Lastly, we have money set aside for welcoming people back to Glendale in the budget of the Greater Downtown Glendale Association. We will work that budget into a collaboration of the introduction of this plan so that it is concentrated. And in addition to our plan, we've gotten volunteer work from Mario Lopez and others who are going to physically welcome people back to Glendale, as well as banners and things that we have done. So we're ready when we can work together. And with that, I thank you very much for the time and the extra time as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that Noah joke, was that at the Archdiocese coffee shop or what? What?
It was at our counter, Councilmember. And by the way, in all
You
fairness
throw
to
out
you.
biblical jokes at your counter?
No, I have to be honest
should
with
hang
you.
out there
Okay,
more
I've
often.
heard the same jokes at the Thousand Oaks City Council, the Arcadia City, I mean, business in general has felt challenged by exorbitant rules and regulations that make it difficult to move a business forward. And I believe that there's an attitude, both with City Council and our
You
city
tell
staff.
Noah that it's a different system
I know
now in
I'm the
Glendale.
oldest person in the room, but I don't know Noah.
All right, and we have one caller, Ani Kishishin.
Ani, you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Ani.
Yes, hi. My name is Ani Kashishian, and I'm the interim executive director of the Professional Development Center at Glendale Community College. As part of Glendale Business Task Force Committee, we have been involved in the development of the Economic Development 3-year strategic plan presented to the City Council today. We believe in the vision and the goals set forth by this plan. We have worked closely with economic development and support this plan. We, as the education sector and provider of state-funded employee training, will continue to collaborate and work together with economic development to make this plan a reality to serve the businesses and ultimately the citizens of City of Glendale and all stakeholders in the region. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you to everyone who actually came to the council meeting and those who called in and those who helped craft this report and present it to us. I, for one, am very excited about what the future holds for our city. I've always said this, that I am bullish on Glendale. I think that we have great things waiting for us, as indicated by some of the new businesses that are coming online, new shops that are opening up, whether it's at the Americana or elsewhere in the Galleria and other places. And I'll tell you, this was all bolstered by my recent trip to Las Vegas for the ICSC conference and the discussions we had there. We went there, and one of the very important meetings we had was with the operators of the Galleria, because as many people would assume that the Galleria is a bit of a dated structure. It was one of the first major commercial centers in the entire, I would say, region, and it was very popular, but the style and the lifestyle approach to shopping has changed, so that has always been a concern as to what will the future hold for the mall. But I'll tell you what message we received from the operators. They were as bullish as we are. They said that everyone is doing phenomenal in the Galleria, that numbers are back up to 2019 levels, that some of their shops and major stores are some of the highest producing ones in the region, if not the West Coast or the United States, which is great to hear. And I know the same goes for the Americana as well. It's one of the reasons why one of the largest companies in the country, Amazon, decided to open their flagship Amazon fashion store, to which we were at the ribbon cutting. But that doesn't mean that because we're good, we can't be better. We have to constantly look for improvements, and this is what I believe this plan does. I want to thank you for cooking into this those key performance indicators. What I don't wish to happen with the key performance indicators, which has been something that agencies do in other cities, has been done here in the past, is we take these KPIs and we use them as an opportunity to pat ourselves on the back by only looking at those areas where we're doing well and ignoring areas where we may slip up. If they're going to be key performance indicators, let's look at them as a whole. And if there's areas where we falter, let's show that and share that with the council and the public so we know how we can correct, adjust, and move forward. You know, if someone, to use baseball or sports analogy, you can improve the velocity of your pitches, but if the placement of those pitches suffers because of it, then you have to go back to the drawing board and adjust it to find that nexus where it's going to work, right? So there's certain things here in Glendale. Our location certainly is an advantage over other cities. The amount of arteries or the number of travel arteries, freeways we have around the city is an advantage. Our schools are an advantage. The housing stock we have, there's a lot going for us. We just have to find how to position ourselves for success. I do agree with a lot of what my colleagues said, especially with Councilmember Najarian's comments identifying the lack of fine dining here. I think that to build on what Mr. Lemmel was saying, we do need to look at that luxury market, that luxury sector, because it is something that we have struggled to find a place for in Glendale, although I believe that there is a hunger for it within the community. You know, it was interesting, you guys had mentioned about, I think, the VIP pass or some other ways of creating tourism or buzz. In San Francisco, when you travel there, they have these medallions that are embedded in the sidewalk around the city, and when you walk, you can download an audio tour, and the medallion will have a number, and you'll press it, and you can hear an audio message about the history of that region, or that neighborhood, or the building that you're in front of. Perhaps that's something that we can have around our city as well. You know, have these QR codes that someone can, if someone's walking around the city and sees one of these identifying markers, can scan the QR code and read about, or through augmented reality or through an audio message can hear about the history of the Alex Theater, or, you know, something interesting about where the Armenian American Museum will be, or the Museum of Neon Art, or any of the other things that we have. And that would not only be something to entice people from outside of the city who may come here, but also our own residents who may want to feel like a tourist one day in their own city. And lastly, we should keep an eye out for what the trends are. Obviously, we are one of the largest cities in Los Angeles County, but there are forces at play in California economically and otherwise to which we may fall victim to. We can't control everything, but we should focus on those things we can. So in that regard, I know that we lost one major company that was succeeded by now Service Titan. There's another one that's relocating, and there will be others that will relocate to other places, but there are others that will also want to relocate here depending on how we position ourselves. In as much as we do have some companies that we have here, to keep those lines of communication open, have someone interacting with them, making them feel like they have a stake, asking them, what are we doing well, what can we be doing better, so we have them here for a long time to come. So those are my comments. I have nothing else to add besides saying thank you. I will now entertain actions. Yes, Councilmember Brotman, you have any comments?
I haven't made my comments. I just had a few questions before. So, yeah, first of all, I think this is a good, solid, robust report. Thank you. And it looks like a lot of work went into it, and there are a lot of good ideas in it. You know, I don't want to take away from that, but I, you know, often try to look for where the holes are. Well, not so much holes in this case, but I just want to emphasize something that probably I and maybe others talked about when we first discussed this is I still think, you know, the best way to develop your economy is to get the basics right. I mean, all these things around branding and VIP passes and free car wash, you know, all these things around the edges are great, and I know that's what you do and that's what you're supposed to be doing, but we want to get the basics right. And there's one quote which as I was reading the report, I thought really was good, and it said, under where it talks about innovation ecosystem, it said, in today's marketplace, high growth companies are choosing to locate and expand in locations where talent is accessible and amenities are plentiful. To remain competitive, it's incredibly important for the city to continue to attract appealing amenities, create more vibrant urban centers to include pedestrian-friendly and walkable areas, as well as offer a variety of housing options, robust public infrastructure, and connectivity. I thought that really hit the mark in that what we really want to do, I think, well, a couple things. I mean, I think one thing is we want to make it easy for businesses to set up and initially, and that involves a lot of the permitting and licensing process. And I'm glad to hear Mr. Lemo say good things about that. I hear a lot of frustration with businesses trying to get set up, trying to do basic things. So I think we just need to focus on that. I think that's core, to be able to make the process less painful when somebody wants to come in here. I hate when I hear, business person saying, it's so frustrating, I'm thinking of leaving. Now people throw that out, and they generally are not going to leave, but still, we don't want to hear that. So I think there's that. But I think the other piece of it is doing all the things that I know we're talking about doing to kind of make Glendale a more walkable, kind of modern urbanist city. And so I just think that's something we really need to focus on. Young, creative talent is what's going to drive our economy. Businesses need these people, and you're going to bring these people in if you have a city that's cool, if you have a city that's modern, that's forward-looking, that's innovative. So some of the things we're doing, like looking at the Verdugo Wash and Space 134 and some of these other concepts, I think are really powerful. That's really what I think is going to, at the very highest level, drive our attractiveness as a place that people want to be. I do like to mention the reference in the report about, I forget what you call it, like new business centers. I kind of think of them as new villages, right? We have our downtown, and then we have the Montrose area, which is kind of a village, and we have Kenneth, which is a village. And we've talked about this in the past. I really would like to see us, look at how we replicate this in a few other areas. I think Adams Square is an area where there's a lot of support in that neighborhood. I mean, when I say Adams Square, around the mini park there, we've got one successful coffee shop, but you just go there and you just say to yourself, this could be another Kenneth Village, right? This could be another, maybe not quite Montrose or not quite Honolulu, that's a lot bigger, but there really could be something great here. And I don't know how you go about doing that, but I think that we should really think about a plan to develop more of these villages, because not everybody wants the downtown experience. We want to pull people into different places and create more variety. Another area which I've talked to Mr. Galanian about many times is kind of the area around Glendale College. It's a very dead area, but you've got this great college. Yes, it's primarily a commuter college, but who knows? I mean, I know there's been talk in the past about student housing for international students in particular. Could that be a little kind of vibrant college town kind of area, right? Right now it's a lot of surface parking lots, and there's just not much that you're going to want to see if you're walking there. It's kind of anti-walkability in that location. So that's another one. Other ones, San Fernando, Victory Boulevard. I think there are a lot of areas where we could maybe put together plans to think about how we can kickstart some interesting, new kind of areas that are going to attract people, and we'll get different kinds of businesses in those areas. Like I think some of these smaller areas, like Adams Square, maybe like Victory. Others we may get not the white tablecloth kind of restaurants, but more of the bars, more of the entertainment, more of the kind of stuff that's going to appeal to the younger crowd. So I like that that was mentioned. I'd like to see us really work on that some more. I'll wrap up just to say that with the metrics, I like some of them. Some of them I think I'm not so sure about. So jobs, of course, net new business, or it says new business. It should be net new business, right? Because we want to measure exits as well as entrance. Vacancy rates, sales tax, and other revenues, those are for sure. Things like number of tours and VIP passes and media impressions, I think those are more kind of for internal. Those are internal metrics, but those are more things that you're doing. It's it's not really the end result, right? The end result is we want, the jobs, the revenues, that kind of thing. So I'm not that interested in some of these more micro measurements. One other thing I would like to add, and I brought this up before, is this measuring kind of the percentage of our workforce that lives in Glendale. Because I think one of the things we can do is if we have these great jobs we're creating here with great talent, get, as much as possible, enable those people to be living here so that they're also part of our economy and part of our community, and giving back into our, nonprofit sector and all that. So that's something I would like to measure, whether it's part of this or something else, I don't really know. And I don't know, I might have a little bit more organized thoughts if it weren't election day, but I just got to reading this yesterday, so I'll leave it there.
I think you did well. Thank you. Councilmember
Yeah.
Devine.
Thank you. I just want to piggyback on something that the mayor mentioned, and that was our contact with businesses after they've been established. And the fact that we had a program previously called GRIT, where some of the council members and our members of the staff from economic development went and actually visited the businesses, explained to them what we had to offer, what we could do for them, how we could help them. Do you have any suggestions? Get their feedback. And I don't know, I know Councilmember Agajanian and I went once, and but I went by myself several other times. But
Me too.
the feedback and the appreciation that these businesses felt that we took the time to visit them and say, what do you think? What do you want? What do you need? Was really valuable to them. And I would like to see something like that begun again, start again, and hopefully strengthen the cooperation, the collaboration between the businesses that are here and staff, because you're new. We have, new kind of processes going on, and I think it's important that they know that. Okay, so that's it. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much to everyone for your questions and comments. And I think staff has received some good feedback from us. Hopefully, that can be incorporated. I also echo what my colleagues have said. With that, is there a motion to adopt a resolution before us?
Move the item.
I'll second it.
All right, may we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Agajanian,
Yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Kasaki.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, staff. And Mr. Clerk, what is next?
Next item is 2, community development regarding streetcar feasibility final report. Motion to note and file Glendale streetcar feasibility study final report. B, a motion providing direction regarding next step to advance streetcar feasibility study.
Mr. Galanian?
Yes, Mayor Kasakian, members of City Council. The feasibility study that's going to be presented to you has been in the works for a while, with the authorization from council to hire a consultant to help staff in putting this report together, with the purpose of evaluating a modern streetcar system that will serve as a high-capacity transit corridor linking the Larry Zarian Transportation Center with downtown Glendale, adjacent neighborhoods, and business districts, for that matter. And Mr. Bradley Calvert, our Assistant Director of Community Development, will present to you the findings in the report, which will include some alternative routes, the potential costs, and the estimated ridership. Mr. Calvert?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council. As noted, this kind of represents the conclusion of our feasibility study. The report that was included with the council report includes that final draft. What we're going to go through today is a discussion on the route alternatives. The locations of the stops, we have some new graphics and images of what these stops could look like, the configurations along Brand and Central, which are the primary streets that would be impacted. Looking at some of the parking impacts that would come along with the streetcar, and then capital and operation cost. What we're asking for today is direction for the project going forward, recognizing that we're wrapping up this feasibility portion. Does council desire staff to move forward and advance this study into environmental review? And we'll discuss what some of those next steps would look like. We would need to assess the two alternatives that are presented here, as well as a no action. But looking at what we could do going forward, and if there's a desire to advance this project based on the findings from the feasibility study. As noted, this project has two route alternatives. We essentially refer to these as the loop alternative, which is alternative 1, and then the bidirectional alternative, which is alternative 2. Alternative 1, as you can see, this starts at the Larry's Area and Transportation Center as it moves north, which is right on the page here, bidirectional along Central, and then as it gets closer to downtown, a couple blocks south, still would need to determine the best street for this location. You would see the kind of loop kind of come back around, right? This would move north all the way up Central, back down south on Brand, and then cut back across just a few blocks south of downtown. It's kind of an important note to make because that little pivot where it goes across, whether it's coming back to Central on this loop alternative or in the bidirectional alternative, it represents this kind of important pivotal point because that everything south of that is bidirectional in both alternatives. That's exactly the same. You can see the locations of the stations here. Really looking at kind of major activity centers, major employment centers along the route. And this is an example of a cross section. The top image here is the existing. This is looking really at kind of Brand Boulevard and what this would look like from a loop alternative, recognizing that you would only have one direction going down Brand, and that would be in the southbound lanes. This would be running curbside. You can see that kind of 11-foot wide lane. This would be shared with automobiles. It would not be a dedicated lane, but it would run curbside. It would have impacts to parking. Brand is known for its diagonal parking. It's kind of considered a Main Street community identity feature in many ways. This would change that. We would be looking at making parking parallel in some locations. In some locations, parking would be eliminated with stations. It really depends on kind of that segment along Brand that you're looking at. One of the benefits of the loop alternative is that you do kind of mitigate the impacts to a single street, right? We're not digging up both the northbound and southbound lanes on Brand, which would really duplicate and double those impacts to traffic during construction. There are some disadvantages, which we'll go through here shortly in terms of a loop alternative, because it's not quite as user intuitive for people, especially if they're not from Glendale. If we're looking at Central, again, this would be going northbound, so you can see that this would actually be on the outside of the parking lanes. And this would be the segment that would be running north along Central before it would curve its stalker and come back down southbound. This does represent an opportunity for us, though, to also make some other changes as part of the transportation infrastructure. If we look at a location like Central where we have a bicycle lane, which is a Class 2 lane, it's dedicated, but it's not protected, really kind of looking at this dig once philosophy. If we were to go in and do the streetcar and make these changes to the street, this is a great opportunity for us to take that bicycle lane and put it inside the parked cars, providing a buffered lane, so it's safer than what we'd see there today. But again, there are some challenges with this loop alternative. And one of those would be looking at, let's say I am somebody who's going to the Americana. I am not from Glendale. I was dropped off at the station right there in front of the Galleria. This is my first, maybe second visit to the city. I'm done at the Americana. I'm going to leave. Logic would probably tell me to go back to where I came from, which would be to go to that station in front of the Galleria. If I were to do that, that would take me on essentially a bit of a roundabout. It would extend my journey from a transit trip perspective much longer. As you'll see later on, during AM and PM peak hours, you might see 44-minute travel times from end to end. And the reason why this happens is because, again, you're not familiar with the system. Most people would look at a system and you see that in terms of rail stations, they go both north and southbound, would be on the same street or even the same station, depending on the kind of system you're using, streetcar, light rail, heavy rail. But in this case, if I were to go back to that location again, I would be taken on a much longer trip, rather than if I were to go, say, eastbound, and I would get onto that station that maybe is not as visible. Again, if I'm not from Glendale and I'm not aware of where these are and where these go, that would take me on a much shorter trip back to the transit center. That is one of the disadvantages. There's a couple examples around the country where this has been done. Largely, it's been done because of lack of right-of-way space. not so much because of the temporary construction impacts that have been done to streets. Prior to moving out west, I worked on the Atlanta streetcar. We actually had to do this configuration because of right-of-way, and we saw this challenge come up many times. It primarily ran through a tourist district. It ran through a place where people from suburban cities and other communities were coming to visit, and they would essentially kind of get taken on this extended ride because they weren't familiar of which station they should get on, because this isn't quite the most user-intuitive manner. Ridership, we estimate, and again, these are pretty broad ranges. These are numbers that would need to be refined in any additional study, but we're looking at somewhere between 1,400 and 3,800 riders per day from alternative one. Construction costs being about $250 to $300 million. Operation costs, we're looking at about $7 million. You'll see a slight variation in that when we get to the bidirectional alternative, and also a slight variation in the ridership number. Overall construction cost is the same regardless of alternatives. Same number of stations, same miles of track. And this is just an example of what that could look like. You can see the streetcar in the distance there. We'll have some other examples of what the different station configurations could look like, and then some other examples along Brand. Alternative 2 is what we call the bidirectional alternative. This one's been largely supported by the public in terms of input from surveys and community meetings. It was supported by the TPC when we presented last month. We'll go over their input here shortly. But this is kind of the most straightforward, user-intuitive. As you can see, everything kind of south of downtown is the same as Alternative 1. It runs bi-directional up Central before it cuts across, and then runs bi-directional on Brand all the way up to Stocker, and then at that point, the train would come back down south. Essentially, the operator would move from one end of the car to the other, and then the train would come back down south. This makes the most sense, because if I were to ride northbound and get off the train somewhere on Brand, I would be able to see my southbound station directly across the street. I know exactly where I would need to go in terms of coming back to my point of origin. Again, same kind of configuration for the stations, same number of stations. This would be pairings instead, so you see less names on this map, but these would just be pairings, so you'd have a northbound and a southbound station. A section example from Brand, you can see, depending on where we're at, this makes changes to parking, so you can see that the parking is converted from angle to parallel as you look from the existing and the proposed sections. Again, shared lanes with automobiles. We would see some changes in some of the lane widths in some cases. That would be the case for both, a few feet off here, a foot off there, to really kind of create enough room for the streetcar and to really kind of recalibrate our lanes and make sure that they can handle all modes of transportation. Section along Central, this is largely the same, again, just bi-directional. This is for the points south of downtown. The impacts to parking here are not as significant. This would be using one of the existing drive lanes, which again would be shared with automobiles. And this is just an example of rendering from a potential station location in downtown on Brand. The stations are pretty straightforward. They can come with a number of different amenities. That's something that would need to be just kind of configured and worked out as we advance through the study on what kind of things would be priorities. This could include anything from weather protection to public art, obviously fair vending machines, trash cans, benches, things of that nature. But these are largely pretty straightforward, extended curbs in most cases, and we'll show some plan views of those shortly. Ridership's expected to be a little bit higher on this alternative, 1,500 to 4,000 per day. This is largely because this is our commercial corridor. This is our entertainment corridor. There are more people using this and coming to this corridor on a regular daily basis, visitors from other cities. So we do expect those numbers to be higher. Construction costs, $250 to $300 million, again, roughly the same. Operating costs would be just a little bit lower, $6.6 million. Really the efficiencies of the kind of bi-directional route, but it's a pretty insignificant number when we're looking at both alternatives here, a pretty modest difference. Stations, this would be a typical bump out station. This would be located close to intersections. You can see essentially this just extends the sidewalk out. That kind of hatch pattern, you see that yellow stripe is the rumble strip. That whole area kind of represents what those stations would be. Again, these could be affixed with a number of different amenities, different things from maps and weather protection and things of those nature. This would, in some cases, depending on locations, this is where we do start to see the actual loss of parking. We'll discuss that a little bit more and what those changes are, but these are actual parking spaces that could be removed from circulation at that point. And then just kind of a typical sidewalk station. In some cases, we would be able to adapt the existing sidewalk area and use that for a station in some instances where we don't need to bump out. You would see that this would be level with the floor, so this would all be ADA compliant to be able to get onto the streetcar and get off. You can see there's kind of ramp configurations that are there as well. So to kind of compare the two alternatives, distance-wise, it's the same, 2.88 miles. We're looking at 9 stations, pairs of stations. So even when we look at that, the loop alternative, we kind of consider a pair, 1 on Central, 1 on Brand. If we're looking at the bidirectional, it'd be the 2 on Brand or the 2 on Central. Construction cost, the same for both of these. Operating costs are slightly different. Ridership, you can see just kind of a tick higher for the bidirectional, again, because we are kind of going down our major corridor. This is our major entertainment and location for visitors. And that can really be seen from that commercial square footage along the alignment, right? 6.2 million feet along the bidirect or the loop alternative. That goes up to 8.15 million square feet along the bidirectional. So we're really kind of hitting that entertainment and commercial core of downtown with that alternative. Parking impacts, not as significant for the loop alternative, and that is because we're not impacting both sides of Brand, both north and south. So you see about a loss of 90 to 94 spaces. The bidirectional does have a greater impact. This is from the actual loss of parking spaces because of the stations. This is also because of about a 30 to 40% loss of parking spaces when you convert that parking from angled to parallel. And then your travel time, roughly the same for both. You can see in the bidirectional, it's slightly shorter, about 3 minutes shorter for any kind of off-peak trip. But those peak trips, and this is end to end. This is going from the Larry's Area Transportation Center all the way to Stalker. That travel time can be different depending on someone's trip. There we go. Average ridership, again, this range is pretty wide. We would need to refine this more. This would look at greater analysis, especially after we've seen some changes, as we noted in the prior council item in terms of the office market. Would we see some sort of changes and fluctuations in those numbers? But right now, we kind of fit right into the middle. These were a number of different precedents and examples that we had looked at from Cincinnati all the way up to Kansas City. Kansas City really is kind of the gold standard of streetcars. A little bit of different circumstances there. That was really a redevelopment tool for them. And per some of the discussions we had with the TPC, that's not necessarily the case here in Glendale because Brand is so well built out. So Kansas City was funded a little bit differently. It catalyzed the development of entire neighborhood. It became kind of a staple of that community. So their ridership is much higher than most of those around the country. But we do see this kind of fitting in that zone between Seattle's First Hill streetcar and down to their South Lake Union streetcar, both pretty important transportation links for the city.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
Quick
go
question.
ahead, Councilman.
Back on that last slide, Kansas City, there was an excerpt from this book, Walkable Cities, that Mr. Galanian sent around. I think they mentioned that Kansas City, it's free.
They have not charged a fare, that is correct. I'm not sure if they changed that recently, but pretty much all of the examples that you see here at least started with free fare.
Yeah.
Some have continued, some have changed that to $1 or $1.50.
Okay, I'm wondering if, how much, does that make such a big difference? I mean, they're up there. Is it because it's free?
I would say probably not, and I say that because Seattle is not, they're not that far behind. Atlanta is free, and their ridership is significantly lower. And that is through a very, very dense urban environment as well. It can play a role, and it's actually recommended as part of this feasibility study that if we were to launch a streetcar, that we do start with a free fare. What ends up happening is that encourages people to try it, they get used to it, and they continue to ride the system even when a fare starts to get implemented.
Okay, thanks.
Some other additional considerations, the operations and maintenance facility. This is a very important part because these trains need to be parked, maintained, cleaned somewhere. Really right now, one of the most viable locations that we see is at the Larry's Area Transportation Center with the parking lots that are there. There are some challenges there that we would need to investigate further, largely because we do receive state funding. We are required to provide that parking at that transit center. If we did anything with any kind of maintenance facility, we would need to replace that parking somehow. You'll notice that there's a pretty big delta between the estimated construction costs that are in these slides, and then as it goes upwards of 400 and some million in the actual report, that's giving us a buffer in the event that if a parking garage needs to be built, construction cost changes, things of that nature. That's why you see such a large contingency, if you will. Because if we were to move forward with this facility, parking would need to be replaced in some fashion or another at the transit center. This also would consider a transit hub. If we were to move forward with Space 134, as you recall, we came back just a couple months ago with that. We're going to continue down the path of investigating the alternatives we have now, but also look at a modified alternative, which could still incorporate some element of a transit hub. One thing I'll also mention that I failed to mention earlier is that the other reason why the bidirectional alternative has been identified as a preferred is that it avoids any kind of conflicts with the BRT. The NoHo BRT would ultimately come down Central. That wouldn't necessarily conflict if the train is going north and the bus is coming south. But on the northbound side, we would have to see likely some sort of shared space or taking more right away for the two alternatives or for the two modes. But even more importantly, what we're going to see is some redundancy, which would probably eat into some of that ridership that we would expect. So that number may change because of that. And that's also the reason why the bidirectional is a little bit more of a preferred alternative as you move another mass transit mode onto a different street. And that's really what we wanted to look at as part of that next phase as well. What are those kind of potential impacts? Is there some sort of symbiotic relationship between these two transit systems? That was something that was very important to the TPC. If we were going to move forward with the streetcar, that it should not preempt other transit alternatives, that it should somehow work with them well, connect with them well. We should find opportunities such as maybe a transit hub, even if it is a block away, but finding alternatives and finding means to be able to make these systems work together so that they're not kind of these discrete travel paths, if you will. Again, some of the feedback that they had, considerations of the impacts to the B line. And really this is kind of a priority trade-off that would ultimately be a council decision. This does overlap with an existing B line route. Is that something that we would like to replace? Recognizing that kind of trade-off in terms of cost. There is an attractiveness to streetcars that buses just simply haven't had, but it doesn't mean that buses also can't achieve that same kind of success if we were to make any modifications there. It really comes down to whether or not there is a desire to replace that existing route with the streetcar. Most likely we would not see running both systems on the same path. It really doesn't make a lot of sense in the same fashion. Running the BRT and the streetcar on the same route doesn't make quite a bit of sense. So they had a preference for alternative 2. Some other nuance and details that they appreciated, like the ability to be able to bring bicycles onto the streetcar was something that they appreciated. Establishing that relationship with the bicycle transportation plan, improvements that we make there, and the PED plan as well, with the locations of stops. And again, kind of ensuring those strong connections with other mobility options, BRT, MetroLink, some of the enhanced bicycle facilities we may see that come with the BRT, but also just through our bicycle transportation plan that we'll be updating. And then they really encourage kind of identifying creative funding resources. You heard the reference to Kansas City's streetcar. That was actually a point of discussion during the TPC meeting. It would work very similar to a bid, as we heard in just the last council item, is that you would have local developers, local property owners, local businesses contributing to this in some fashion. That could be through sponsorships, through an assessment. That would take a lot more research and work for us to understand whether or not that could work. And the reason why I say that is, again, either corridor, these are largely built out. When we're looking at a project like Kansas City, that was largely an underutilized area. So that streetcar unlocked a lot of development potential, so it made sense to be able to pull in that revenue to help fund it. But that doesn't mean that that's the only creative funding strategy. There are a few different alternatives in this report, all things that we would need to investigate further if we were to move along with the project. So what this study would look for in the next steps, again, identifying those funding sources to advance the study is going to be key. We're not here today to ask council to allocate funding. If council wished to move forward with this, we would seek alternative options, outside funding to move forward, but that would include engineering, environmental review would need to be done, design refinement. There's still some investigation and research to understand. Often when projects like these are done, you find that there's a number of different utilities embedded in the street that can drive cost up. Investigating those things earlier is better. That helps keep our costs down. And then advanced analysis on parking, the overall construction and operating cost. Again, utilities, as I mentioned, there's a lot of work to be done around the operations and maintenance facility, and then really honing in on those ridership numbers. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I have one question, and that's about the length of time it takes to get from point A to point B and end-to-end travel time. why does it take that long? Is it because of the number of stops? You know, I just assumed when I heard, you know, trolley or streetcar that it was going to be faster than your normal bus or, but it seems like 44 minutes in the morning, 50 minutes in the evening, that's a long time.
I would note that that's end to end. So
Right.
if we're really looking at riders who are coming from the transit center to, say, the employment center in downtown, that time would be less. High 20s, low 30s, maybe would be that travel time. Part of that is, yes, there are stops. So, you know, at each point they have to make a stop. People have to board, deboard. So it does create some delays in that. But also it is still sharing space with automobiles. So it will still be subject to traffic conditions. This is not a light rail line that has its own kind of dedicated right-of-way that separates it from cars. So it would still be subject to those travel conditions, plus the frequency of stops.
Okay, and you need a parking study because with this alternative 2, we lose 123 spots. With alternative 1, we only lose, well, half of that because of the double side. So that's what the parking study would help us with somehow?
We would like to understand the broader implications to downtown, taking those parking spaces kind of out of circulation.
Yeah, okay. And it is expensive, but okay, go ahead.
I just have a few questions. There was this bus system which we would have from Burbank coming on Glen Oaks, going down on Central, and then goes to, I guess, Broadway. Broadway to Pasadena, right?
Correct.
Still is in. So how this will impact that bus lane or bus stops?
If we were to go with the bi-directional alternative, it wouldn't have an impact. There may be an opportunity to have some stops in close proximity around Broadway and Brand on the bi-directional. If we were to go with the loop alternative, there would be impacts at that point. Most likely the BRT and the streetcar would need to share a lane, or we would have to take more right-of-way to have both of those systems run on the same street. Again, that is why the bi-directional alternative is really kind of the early preferred alternative, because it wouldn't have those same conflicts with the BRT. It would be on a different street.
However, that bus lane will have some impact on this because people are going to use the same bus anyway, going from north to south, let's say.
If we were to do the loop alternative, yes, because you would be on the same street. If you were to do the bi-directional, the BRT will run on Central, and then the streetcar would run on Brand. So they'd be on parallel streets, so they wouldn't be in the same space.
Where do we get the money from for $250 to $300 million? Where the money will come from?
That is something we would need to identify. There's a couple of different alternatives and sources that are identified in this report from federal and state level. They do recommend looking at things like some sort of a tax benefit district, if you will, to help fund that. Sponsorships, Milwaukee's The Hop is one of the examples in there that they actually receive a $10 million a year sponsorship. That offsets their operating cost. There's a number of different strategies in there. We would need to see what's available. As we move through environmental review, we start to zero in on when we would essentially break ground. We would need to see what sort of grant opportunities and funding sources would be out there.
Okay, but we are not going to put money in this, do we? We're going to get grants. Glendale is not putting any money to operate this or bring this bus system or rail system to here, do we?
Again, that's something we'd have to investigate as we move along. Some grants require a local match, some don't. It'll all depend on what kind of funding's available and what can be applied to the project.
Okay, one more question. So Beeline is doing exactly the same thing, right? So then if we have to put money, I guess if you're getting some sort of grant, that's why I was asking, grant, it's, okay, it makes sense. But if we are pushing Beeline out of that area and spending tens of millions of dollars and operating cost of how many millions? 7.4 million or 6 million, doesn't matter. $7 million is operating cost. So that will not impact on Beeline. Beeline is still going to have same cost, or Beeline will have less cost when this will be operational?
We would have to look at how those buses would be reallocated. We likely wouldn't run the streetcar and Beeline on the same route, so maybe those buses get moved to another location and a new route. Maybe they just get taken out of circulation altogether, and we save
No,
a
I
little
was
bit
saying
of
the
sources.
operating cost of Beeline should be compared with this one. If
In
one-
totality, okay.
Otherwise, if Beeline's the cost of operation is, I don't know how much it is, $1 million, and you want to spend $7.4 million to do the same thing, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, this needs the Beeline to be studied in conjunction with what you have done here. Thank you.
All right, any of my other colleagues? Councilmember Najarian.
Thank you for the report. I know this has been many years in the making. We talked about this maybe 6, 7 years ago. And I was very hot on it at that time. I think it's fair to say I've cooled a little bit, mainly because of the cost factors that we're looking at, and also the fact that I know there are several other local streetcar type projects out there vying for funds. One of them I know is the Inglewood People Mover, which is going to connect the Crenshaw line to the SoFi Stadium, which is going to be an Olympic venue and perhaps a World Cup venue as well. And that's a very, I think that's a very worthy line with a lot of attention drawn to it because of those large international events being held there. And even that line, even with all the panache that their mayor, James Butts, carries with it, him even being on the Metro board, they're facing some severe funding challenges. And it's about the same distance, perhaps price maybe is a little bit more than ours, maybe by a 50, 100 million or more. So it's good that we have done this. We've got the plan up, on the shelf. I don't foresee funding being made available. And aside from that smaller project, there's also other projects. The board you're on, Mr. Agajanian, which is working with the West Santa Ana branch, and there's a lot of other lines, the Gold Line East Side extension, the Gold Line Foothill extension. I don't know if realistically we're going to be in line for some funding. What we do, the whole point is to make connectivity between the train station and the Amtrak and Metrolink trains that bring people into the city and to bring them up, as well as some shorter distance travel up and down Brandon Central. I think we need to fall back and maybe up our game on the Beeline routes that serve those two. It's Beeline 1 and 2. They each go counterclockwise. We're maybe back going to be getting a demonstration. Maybe I'm a little too confident, but I know there's new negotiations going on for the demonstration electric bus from BYD. Maybe if we start with that and use that as a route and bring some attention to it. I mean, the route is great. I mean, anything that connects to the train station that is able to bring bicycles on board and bring it up to the employment centers and entertainment centers, just like our economic development people were, just like you were overseeing, I think would be a great plus. I just don't see, I see some hurdles in this streetcar, the parking loss, the construction. If we use once the BRT comes in, those Beeline buses are going to be permitted to use those dedicated bus lanes that the BRT is using. So you'll get some speed, you'll get a higher level of speed to address the concerns that Councilmember Devine was talking about. So I'm thinking maybe we should keep this on the shelf, in the event there's some great funding that comes our way, but maybe focus on beefing up and making our connection to the train station with our Beeline system, or whatever we want to call it. Doesn't have to even be called the Beeline. We could give it its own name, you know, the electric line or the zip line or whatever, to booster that sort of ridership and interest in riding. Thank you, Mr.
Councilmember Brotman.
Yes, thank you. So I think I agree with a lot of what Councilmember Najarian just said, not about the funding, because I don't have any insight into that, but I mean, I love transit projects, and when you see the pictures, it looks cool, and I'm sure there are people who would not get on a bus that would get on this just because it feels different, right? But I'm kind of skeptical. I don't think there's a real clear use case for this. It's, you know, as part of our transit strategy, it's not ideal. You know, it's got to fight with bus and car. Well, it's got to fight with car traffic. So it really doesn't give you anything other than what you get from the Beeline, except that it feels cool, right? If it had its own dedicated right of way, then, you know, we're talking like more of like a bus rapid transit system with, you know, but fixed to the ground on a rail. So, you know, that would make more sense. I thought it was interesting what in that excerpt from the book that I referenced before, Jeff Speck calls it, he said it's a bus that can't change lanes, you know, which is kind of interesting. So it's inefficient. It's not really great as part of our transit strategy, I don't think. It takes you into the Larry's Area and Transit Center, but I don't know, unless you can get a lot more better headways there on that Metro link.
For you, we're getting it.
Because
soon there are going to be.
I've looked at that many times. I've looked at trying to use that to go downtown. I've tried to use that like to go visit my parents in Orange County, and it's just like it never lines up. And it just seems so inefficient that I doubt bringing people to that transit center, I don't think has a lot of value right now. Maybe after Councilmember Najarian fixes everything, it'll have a lot more value. But right now, I don't see a ton of value. To me, the exciting thing is eventually getting light rail up here. It's that West Santa Ana branch, right? And I know that's, you know, maybe pie in the sky. Maybe it's, you know, we're all going to be gone by the time that comes. But that's another concern, because if you lay down, you know, tracks along Brand, it's going to be very hard then to kind of rip it up and put in a light rail system. I don't think it's the same infrastructure. So yeah, for all those reasons, I'm kind of skeptical. And then the other side is, I know that most of these systems around the country have been really more economic development tools than they've been transit. And like the Transportation and Parking Commission said, that doesn't really apply here. So, if the businesses around there, well, not the property owners around there, thought that this would really enhance property values and business and they were willing to pay for this through some kind of an assessment, through some kind of like a BID, then yeah, maybe that changes the story a little bit. But I asked you in the briefing, like, what do they feel about it? And you said they weren't like all that excited. They weren't jumping up and down about it, which kind of tells you that maybe it doesn't have that that kind of potential, because we are already developed. So yeah, I'm kind of, as much as I like the pictures, I'm kind of lukewarm on it, and I agree with Councilmember Najarian that it's probably just something to keep on the shelf for now and not pursue.
All right. As far as my comments, I think that my colleagues have made some good points. I generally like the idea. I like the fact that we're thinking about these types of mobility issues. I think that unfortunately, as much as we all would like to speak out against some of the directives from Sacramento telling us, how much housing we need or how much we will develop, the fact of the matter is the Glendale is going to look much different in 50 years than it does today. downtown will probably be even more built out than it is now. There may be buildings that are higher than they are now. I don't know which councils will be the ones to approve them, but it seems as though it probably will be an inevitability when you look at where Brand was 50 years ago, where it is today, and looking to the future. It would be great to start thinking in terms of what sort of infrastructure to lay down in anticipation of that. And I think it would be good for us to start thinking about it in terms of how to move people around what will inevitably be even a growing more denser part of the city. But it is certainly a lot of money, and it's something that at first we have sticker shock looking at. I personally liked what the Transportation Commission recommended, which was, I believe, alternative 2, correct?
Yeah.
Correct, the bidirectional.
And in as much as it can be something that could be explored but kept on the side burner until such appropriate time when we can pull the trigger on it or see if things have shaken up in a way where it is feasible or it makes sense. I'm supportive of it, but I share some of these concerns as well in terms of cost and timing, et cetera. So I don't know what type of direction that you need from us at this point, because there was a motion to note and file as well as some.
Alternative
I didn't
Mayor
get a
Kasakian.
chance.
I'm sorry,
Alternative.
I apologize. Councilmember
I'm sorry.
Devine, please provide.
I'm sorry, I just asked the question, but I just wanted to say that when our residents and people all over, I guess, the world are looking at transportation, they're looking at efficiency, they're looking at reliability, and they're looking at speed. And as far as I'm concerned, this doesn't meet those qualifications. Also, I think we're being asked today about issuing funding probably for another study, which would be, as I've been told, another $1 million. So I don't know if I'm ready today to approve a study that's going to cost an additional $1 million right now, especially after I hear that funding for this kind of a project would be difficult to get in the first place. So I'm not willing to approve it right now as well.
Yes, Councilmember Agajanian.
As has been mentioned here, EcoRapid also is fighting for dollars. Of course, that's different project, but it's very difficult now to get money, $200 million to $300 million. So that's why I would like to offer alternative 2 at this time, to move based on alternative 2.
There is a motion to support moving forward with alternative 2. Is there a second?
Mayor Kasakian, there is a caller.
Oh,
Okay, let's take the call.
Catherine Yurka, you got 3 minutes. Catherine, go ahead. Ms. Yurka? Catherine? Catherine, can you hear me?
Okay. All right. There was a motion made by Councilmember Agajanian. Is there anyone that wishes?
Mayor, so the items on the agenda are to note and file, or, and there's a separate motion to provide direction to staff. So is the motion to
The
provide
direction to staff is, by
Pursue.
Councilmember Agajanian, was to pursue alternative 2. And we're waiting for a second on that. Before we note and file, because we can always note and file the report. And it doesn't,
I would have a substitute motion.
okay,
Which I
well, for lack of a second, I think
Okay.
that first motion will die. And now we can entertain an alternate motion.
My motion would be to note and file.
Second, and I'll second
All right,
that.
so there's a motion to note and file this report and a second. Is there any other further discussion or any other alternatives? If there isn't, going once, going twice, let's have a roll call.
Councilmember Agajanian,
yes.
Brotman,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
and Mayor Kasakian.
Yes, thank you. All right, thank you to staff for that. That concludes our the items for our special city council meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn as well as a second?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we stand adjourned at 4:49 PM. I'll wait a moment until we can change the marquee on TV screen, and then we'll call to order the city council meeting. And we don't have a housing, like, we don't even have to call the housing closed session item or anything. Okay, so, all right, that's done. All right, let's call to order the city council meeting.
Councilmember Agajanian.
Present.
Brotman.
Here.
Divine.
Here.
Najarian. Here. Mayor Kasakian.
Here, let's have the closed session items.
1A would be conference with legal counsel pending litigation, Benson versus City of Glendale, LASC case number 18STCV05002. B would be conference with labor negotiators, the city designated negotiators attending the closed session are Ruben Colanian, Michael J. Garcia, Jillian Van Meiden, John Tucktayan, Amy Martin, Jason Bradford, Carl Pavlidis, and Laura Kelty. The name of the employee organization is Glendale Police Officers Association. C is conference with labor negotiators, the city designated negotiators attending the closed session are Ruben Colanian, Michael J. Garcia, Jillian Van Meiden, John Tucktayan, Amy Martin, Jason Bradford, and Silvio Lanzas. The name of the employee organization is Glendale Management Association. D would be public employment attorneys, and E has been taken off the agenda.
All right, do we anticipate reporting out on any of this?
We do not anticipate reporting on any of these items, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn to, or we will recess to closed session and return hopefully somewhere around 6. Thank you.